Welcome, welcome, boys. This is going to be a video where we replace the rear brake pads, rotors, and calipers on our Dodge Challenger. I already have a video on replacing just the pads themselves, so if you're only here for that, there's a little card up at the top right of the screen. Go ahead and click on that, and you can watch just the brake pad changing procedure. However, if you're going to do all of it, like I am today, then go ahead and stick around and you'll be able to get it all in one glorious go. But we are not starting with this side. We are actually going to start with the passenger side. And that's because the right rear is going to be the furthest place away from the master cylinder. And when you bleed brakes, you want to bleed from there first, then the left rear, then the front right, then the front left. And that's because if you introduce any air into the lines and you are bleeding the brakes from the right rear, the furthest place along, you may get some air bubbles that don't quite make it back there. They might get stuck in one of the other three locations, one of the other three lines. And so if you started from that side, but there's a bubble here, here, or here. Now when you move this side, since it's closer, the bubbles can only get stuck here, there, or there, and no longer back on the right rear. So we will start with that side first. I've already got the car jacked up, as you can see. I have it lifted from the center diff, and then I rested the frame back down on the Harbor Freight Kill-You jacks. But I do still have the Harbor Freight Kill-You jack stands. I do have the jack still under the differential. So in case these fail, which they shouldn't, but if they did, the jack will catch it after it drops like a whole whopping 1 inch. Another thing I went ahead and already did is I opened up the reservoir and sucked all the dirty fluid out with this guy. It took about 4 or 5 of these things to get a lot of the fluid out. It was kind of a goldish color, so it wasn't super bad. But, you know, it wasn't super great. And then we have this as our replacement synthetic super heavy-duty DOT4 brake fluid. That'll be replacing it. I have another bottle inside the basement in case I need it, but that should hopefully get us by. We'll find out. But the reason I did this first is because once you start bleeding the brakes and sucking all the fluid through the reservoir, you don't really want to take the dirty fluid and then have to sit there all day while you get all the dirty fluid through the system. It's easier to suck all the dirty stuff out of the reservoir, fill it up with clean, and then once you start bleeding, you'll notice it'll change from yucky to clean. Once it goes to clean, then you've gotten rid of all the old fluid out of the system. You can go ahead and seal up that caliper, boom, move on to the next, so on and so forth in that manner. Once all the old fluid comes out and then turns clean, that's it. So go ahead and get set up on the right rear and start taking the brakes apart. Okay, boys, and I'll apologize in advance for the wind noise, but as usual, it's hot out, and your boy doesn't feel like dying of a heat stroke. So here's what we're going to need: 13 mil, 15 mil, 18 mil. Banjo bolt. We'll get the smallest one, our 13 mil, but we don't do that yet. These are going to be the 15 mil. These are the bolts that hold the caliper to the brackets. And then the largest ones, the 18 mils, that'll be these 2 bolts that hold the caliper bracket onto our axle here. So get this off first, pull the caliper off, pull the pads out. Now, as you can, like I mentioned earlier, I've already done these. So these pads have a shitload of life left in them. And honestly, the lip's only like semi-big on this rotor. But he's got all the parts, he wants them all replaced, so that's what we're doing. He said he wants to keep these pads as, I guess, for a rainy day backup. So if and when the ones we're putting on there fail, and then by that time the only thing he'll need probably is brakes, because he'll still have fairly new rotors and calipers. We'll just swap these old pads back on and call it a day. So that's what he wants to do. That's what we're going to do. So So I'll get you set up in a position where you can see. Okay, boys, I think I got you in a good spot. We shall see. Okay, apparently we're going to use an 18 wrench to hold, so while we're trying to spin this off at 17, we need an 18 to hold this. So let me go grab my 18 wrench. Okay, boys, and this is the part number. Boy Charles 2932. That is for the right rear. 33, of course, is for the left rear. Now, as you take the banjo bolt off, that caliper is going to come out, and then we'll slap the new one in. And it appears this one also comes with the bracket. So we won't need to reuse that, so I'll just have to bust it loose, the caliper off of there, in preparation for that. And then, of course, we do still have to get the rotor off, but that's a matter of these things, and then just give her the old Yankee yank. So sit down so you can see it. Okay, boys, and here is part number for the pads. That is what our new rotor is going to look like. This is the part number for this side. If I can freaking hold the damn thing steady. Yeah, I'm trying to use all my hands here. There we go, position right. So when the rotor spins, the grooves will be kind of going like that. So slap the rotor back on, and then we'll reuse these for my dad, who used to build cars at Chrysler. These are only to hold the rotors on at the assembly plant. However, we're going to go ahead and put them on anyway, reuse them. That way the rotor doesn't have any chatter noise in it. And I guess I should go get my wire wheel and clean up all this rust on the hub, because and anti-seize it, I guess. So next rotors isn't such a shit show to get off. So let me go grab that stuff and do that real quick. Okay, boys, so now when the whole caliper's off, as you saw, this came in one piece. You just give it a good yank, and these pins will come out of these little boots. However, once you do that, see, these are dry. So we are going to use our brake parts lubricant here, kind of grease up our pins. That way they're all nice and lubed up. And then we'll slidey boy them back in. Alright, so now we'll slide that back in here, and then I'll go ahead and bolt goes in. But if you were wondering, this is now a 19, not an 18, and this is now a 14, not a 15, just so you know. And this is, of course, the bleeder valve is a 10. So we'll go ahead and get this mounted back up at her. Okay, boys, and now we're going to do the brake bleeding part. There, we just crack open this for bleeder valve. Okay, boys, and for the brake bleeding part, what I'm doing is I am the one at the bleeder valve, and I have my dad inside doing the pumping. So what I'm doing is I'm having him press the brake pedal 5 times, and on the 5th one, he's going to press and hold down while I crack open the bleeder valve. That's going to then force the fluid out the caliper, and then air will be displacing any of the missing fluid in through the reservoir. So make sure your reservoir is topped off and full. You want to do this many times until that fluid turns a clear new color. So I have him, while the bleeder valve is closed, I have him press the pedal 5 times. On the 5th one, he tells me, okay. I open the bleeder valve, the pedal sinks to the floor, he then says, okay, it's to the floor. I close the valve again, he lifts up the pedal, and then primes it again 5 times. He says, okay. I open the bleeder valve. He then, whenever the pedal sinks to the floor, says, okay, it's at the floor. And then close the bleeder valve, and then rinse and repeat several times until you are done evacuating all the fluid. And remember to keep the reservoir topped off so you can suck any air in the system. That is our brake fluid. Looks like dirty piss, but that'll do for this wheel. So we're going to, of course, time lapse the other side. So for those who came for the 16-bit music, stick around. And for those who get the general idea, that's how you replace the calipers, the brackets, the rotors, and the pads, and bleed the brakes. Do make sure your banjo bolt is super duper ultra mega tight. And by the way, it is a 12mm now, because of course it's hard to make the same bolts the same size. So of course, you know, all the aftermarket ones have to use different bolts, but it goes your caliper, crush washer, brake line, crush washer, the banjo bolt. Very, very tight. Alright, catch you on the other side for the time lapse. And that's it, boys. That's how we replace the calipers, rotors, and brake pads, as well as bleed the brakes, the rear axle, on our 2010 Dodge Challenger. The front will, of course, be its own video. So, stay tuned for further. And before, if you were only doing this axle, don't forget to bed your brakes. So, quick crash course on that. And the quick crash course on bedding your brakes. You want to accelerate the vehicle to about 60 miles an hour and then very rapidly slow the vehicle to about 10 to 15 miles an hour without locking up the brakes. And you want to do that between 8 and 10 times. And as you do that, you are going to start to smell some brake material, and they will start to fade as well and not work as well. But you have to do that in order to bed the brakes, and that would be transferring some of that brake pad material from the pad to the rotor. So 8 to 10 times, accelerate up to a 60, slow down to about 10 to 15, but do not come to a complete stop. You don't want to warp your rotors right off the get-go. So do that, and you will be golden. Alright, thanks for watching, boys. Peace.